Our gospel today comes from St. Matthew, the 5th chapter. Jesus said, "You have heard that it was said, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. But I say to you, do not resist an evildoer. But if anyone strikes you on the right cheek, turn the other also. And if anyone wants to sue you and take your coat, give your cloak as well. And if anyone forces you to go 1 mile, go also the 2nd mile. Give to everyone who begs from you, and do not refuse anyone who wants to borrow from you. You have heard that it was said, you shall love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I say to you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you, so that you may be children of your Father in heaven. For he makes his sun rise on the evil and on the good, and sends rain on the righteous and on the unrighteous. For if you love those who love you, what reward do you have? Do not even the tax collectors do the same? And if you greet only your brothers and sisters, what more are you doing than others? Do not even the Gentiles do the same? Be perfect, therefore, as your heavenly Father is perfect." The Gospel of the Lord. Praise to you, Lord Christ. Congregation may be seated. Today's sermon will be presented in the form of a dramatic monologue. And I invite you to imagine that you are now entering the home of the Randall family. Mrs. Randall has just returned home from church at Bethel with her 3 children. She is greeted by her husband, Darren, who has just returned home from working a night shift at Methodist Hospital. The time is about 12 o'clock noon on a Sunday in Rochester.
Thanks for your help, kids. I really appreciate that you helped me unload the car. There was so much stuff from church today. Sarah, be sure to practice your flute. And Derek, you have a little bit more homework to do. And then piano. And be sure, all of you, to do your homework. I know that you all have stuff. Oh, but it's such a beautiful day out there. Get all those things done. Go outside and play. Anything to get off those electronics. Oh, hi, Darren. I didn't expect that you'd be awake. Oh, you worked the night shift, and here you are, still awake and eating a little bit of breakfast. You know, I'd offer you some of this egg bake, but it looks like you've already gotten some here. You know, I'm a little bit disappointed right now. I got to be honest. I brought this egg bake to Bethel because, of course, it was the brunch today. And you know what? It wasn't even used. Yeah. So I went in, and we were joining in the brunch, of course, the kids and I went in the kitchen, and afterward, well, at the brunch, I did notice I kind of scanned the egg bakes, and I saw there were 4 there from Susan Larson, and she, of course, is such an amazing cook. So I thought, well, where's my egg bake? But, you know, whatever. I'm sure they were rotating them in. But I went in after church, and I went to see if there was anything left in the pan, and well, all the muffins that I brought were gone, but there sat my egg bake, totally untouched. I'm just a little irritated. I mean, well, you know, I worked late yesterday, and then I got home, and I made that. I probably was up till like 1 o'clock. Oh, I know. It was not an obligation. I signed up to do it. I love to do that stuff. You're right. It's just, you know, I went the extra mile, so to speak. Yeah, you're right. That was part of the gospel reading, wasn't it? Going the extra mile. Funny how church connects with your mind, and you don't even realize that, I guess. But yeah, that's true. How was church? Yeah, it was great. It's always great at Bethel. Pastor Jason played the cello. Oh, it was so beautiful. And then the kids sang. That's why we went a little bit early. And I know you missed it, but they'll put it on the web, and you can watch it there. Oh, but, you know, that's one thing you do miss when you go Saturday night, isn't it? You miss all that special music. However, you have like a private concert with Jim Baller. I know. Yeah, isn't that great? He's just an amazing organist. You know, I probably don't tell you enough, Darren. I really admire that you make time for worship, that you go on a Saturday night when it'd be easier just to sleep a little bit longer or do something else before that night shift, but you go into church and you worship and then you go work. Ugh, I think you're a better Christian than me sometimes. I mean, if it had been me, I'd probably be sleeping in this morning and worshiping at the Church of the Holy Comforter with Pastor Pillow preaching. Yes, I know it's not a contest and it's not about perfect attendance, but I think there is something about perfect that Jesus calls us to be about or calls us to certain things. That was it. That's why I have mixed reviews about church today. All those other things are really awesome, but then I hear that Matthew reading and, it got to me, you know? I mean, here Jesus says, turn the other cheek and give your coat when someone sues you, and then go the extra mile. Oh, that brings up my egg bake. And then the cherry on top of the whole ice cream dessert of discipleship. Love your enemy. Oh, man, that really stuck out to me today. Love your enemy. Pray for those who persecute you. You know where I'm going with this. Yeah, I know. Dan and Krista. I mean, could they be any less gracious of a neighbor? I don't even remember the last time I talked to Krista. Dan, maybe a little wave here and there, but, you know, it's just so hard. I mean, after all that stuff happened and, you know, it went back and forth. Well, you know the whole story. I don't need to rehearse it. It's just hard, you know. I just seeing them all the time and maybe we should move. We should move. Yeah. Okay, that's extreme. You're right. Just maybe move on, but I just can't. I mean, it was wrong. Wasn't it wrong what happened? Don't you agree? Okay, we won't go there. We won't get into it again. I just heard that today, and I thought, you know, I never thought I had an enemy until that whole thing happened with the two of them. And well, it probably doesn't help that they're so perfect. I mean, the perfect kids and the perfect yard, you know, perfect jobs and that vacation they went on. Oh, I know, those are superficial things. That's not even what it's about. I get that. It's just that, yeah, I don't know. I don't know how to be neighbor to them. Oh, that was another thing from the reading today. It wasn't just that list of all the things that Jesus asks us to do, that turning the other cheek and the loving the enemy thing. Then Jesus says, be perfect as your Father in heaven is perfect. Oh, I mean, I'm not Mother Teresa. There's no way I can be perfect as Jesus is perfect. Oh, I mean, what? That's right. Pastor Anjanette talked about perfection. You know, I got stuck on that enemy thing. You're right. She talked about perfection, that word in Greek is different than the kind of perfection what I was talking about with Dan and Krista. Yeah, what was it? You know, I love it when they start talking Greek in sermons. It's so cool. And when they go theologically deep and everything, love that. I also love it when Pastor Wall is preaching and then he starts singing a hymn and then he preaches and then he sings. It's like a musical. I love it. What was that Greek? Yeah. Oh, you have such a good memory, Darren. Telos. The Greek word was telos, and it's perfection, but it means not like perfect, Dan and Krista perfect. It means coming into wholeness, being what God has created you to be. That's the kind of perfection Jesus calls us to. Yeah, maybe that's the kind of way I can take that word a little bit differently. Oh, and then she had that Martin Luther quote. What was it again? I got it. The Christian life is not about arriving. It is about becoming. Yeah, I think I can live into that. Jesus sets up all these high expectations for us, not so we can just fail, but because when we have that kind of perfection in him, well, then we have a chance. We have a chance to love the neighbor, love the enemy even, pray for those who persecute us. I mean, on my own, I could never do all that, but, Jesus sort of gives us this opportunity now to have this kind of love take shape here and now in this time. A glimpse of God's kind of love and God's kind of grace. But it isn't easy. I guess being a Christian isn't supposed to be easy. But I think thinking about that word today, about perfection, that Jesus gives us opportunity then to live fully into who we're created to be. Yeah. We had communion tonight and today, and it was really helpful. I always like having communion. It just helps me feel like maybe I can keep going with this Christian commitment that I've made. Because sometimes I just feel like I fall short. But that's right. She had that quote. I wrote it down. It was so good. I wrote it on my bulletin here. St. Augustine said that the Lord's Supper invites people to receive who you are, and then you can go become what you have received. Yeah. It's like I taste forgiveness, and then I'm able to forgive. On my own, I can't do that, but Jesus strengthens me, I'm glad I get to taste a little bit of that grace in that bread and the wine. I need it. The world needs it. I got this egg bake thing all wrong. You've eaten, I've eaten, the kids have eaten. I made this to share, right? When I pulled in the driveway, I noticed that Krista and Dan had a whole bunch of cars in front of their house. And, well, you heard about Krista's uncle? I know, so tragic. I think that's family from Nebraska that's come up to be with them. I think I read in the paper the funeral's tomorrow. I'm going to bring this egg bake to them. I'm going to run to the store, get some more muffins since all those were eaten at church, and some fruit and a card. I've been meaning to send a card. Yeah, that's what I'm going to do. I'll just go over there with those things, and I'm sure they have a lot of people to feed, and boy, will they be surprised to see me at the door. Probably think I'm poisoning them. But yeah, make sure the kids do all the stuff that I asked them to do. Let them play outside a little bit, and yeah, I'll be back. Oh, I forgot to tell you. Pastor Anjanette started her sermon by saying she was on her way to church practicing her sermon in the car, and she got pulled over by the police. She said she pulled down her scarf and said, "I'm a pastor at Bethel." And they didn't give her a ticket, and oh my goodness. I guess even pastors aren't perfect. I remember she says, we all stand in need of the grace of God. Guess that is freeing, isn't it? I'm still becoming Christian, the fullness that God longs for me to be.